Welcome to another edition of Sales TV Live. Today, we're calling you out. You call it coaching, but it's just managing deals. We're joined by Steve Radford, founder of Greater Sales Company and author of the upcoming book, How to Sell. Steve is a leading voice in professional sales development with 25 plus years of experience leading and training frontline sales teams. Drawing from his four hats model, we'll explore why most sales managers are wearing the wrong hat at the wrong time. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Rob.
Steve, let's jump right into it. A lot of what gets called coaching is really just managing. And at that, deal managing,
Yes.
report managing, maybe people managing. From your perspective, what's happening in those conversations that makes them feel like coaching, but actually isn't?
I think it comes down to coaching increasingly being used as a catch-all term for so many different things. When I see coaching as being just kind of one part of the training and development spectrum, most managers would love to spend more time training and developing their team, but typically it's a time pressure thing. They end up managing the sale, managing the deal, because that's the thing that's front and center. So for most managers, it's a time pressure or a targets pressure that push them towards managing the deal. And if they do think about managing people, they'll then put everything in that bucket under the heading of coaching. But coaching, or true coaching, like I say, it's one part of the learning and development spectrum.
So I've alluded to your four hats model. Can you briefly describe for us what you mean by that?
Yes. Yeah, sure. So let's take a step back. So we're talking about developing people now at this stage. That's what my four hats model, to give it that term, sits under. And when you're developing people, you need to be really thinking about three things. So why, what, and how. So the why is it we're doing this? What is the performance that we're looking for? And break that down, not just hitting targets. Let's break it down into component parts. The what is, well, what are the drivers of that performance? So you might be working on mindsets or knowledge or skills that lead to the behaviors that it is that you try and develop. But the four hats model sits in the how. How is it we're going to help that person to develop what it is that we're looking for that's going to lead to that performance outcome? So the four hats model, it helps manage to decide, okay, if that's where I'm working, if I'm helping people to develop as an individual, to develop their sales performance that way, how am I going to do that? What hat am I going to wear? And coaching is one of those four hats. So the way to think about it is, if you think of a graph, so you've got your x-axis across the bottom and your y-axis up the side. Your x-axis is your information transfer spectrum. And it runs from being very tell focused, bottom left, to being very ask focused, bottom right. And then your axis up the side, this is your encouragement spectrum. So it starts at the bottom from being very nurturing and runs to the top, being very challenging. So that's our development matrix. And like all good sales graphs, this one's got a great big diagonal line going from bottom left to top right. And that is your performance development pathway. So when you want to think about how you're going to help that person to develop, think about where they are on that pathway. So people who are new at developing whatever it is you're helping them, is they start bottom left. And that bottom left is where you're very tell focused and you're very nurturing. So the hat you wear there is the instructor hat. Be very clear about what it is you want them to do. Just tell them what it is. That's the best way to start, and do that in a really nurturing way. And that moves that person along that pathway. The next step along that pathway is where you wear your teacher hat. So this is where your typical sales workshop would sit. You're still on the tell side of the spectrum, but as part of that workshop, you make it interactive. So you start to ask some questions, and you're still on the nurture side of the encouragement spectrum, but you start to ask learners to do something with you what they're learning in the workshop space. So it's interactive. We're starting to bring in a little bit of that ask and a little bit of that challenge. And that moves them further along that development pathway. And then when you cross that midpoint, so when you're helping salespeople who have already got an element of performance in the area that you're helping them to develop, that's where you put on your mentoring hat. So a good mentor starts by asking questions which challenges the learners to use a little bit of what they already know. But mentors are looking for gaps. You're not yet at the top of that pathway. And so a good mentor will identify those gaps through the questions, but then will step in with advice and guidance to help fill that gap and move the learner to the fourth area, which is that top area of your sales performance, which is where you put on your coaching hat. So true coaching is what you do with salespeople who are already be a reasonable performance in this area, and you're very ask focused and you're very challenge focused. So you ask questions which challenge that learner to take ownership of their development and move them out of their comfort zone. So that's the 4 different hats. You can use it as a spectrum. You can take people through that instruct, teach, mentor, coach pathway, or you can use it to diagnose where is it this person already sits. So which hat should I wear to help them to develop further?
So how do I know when I'm wearing the wrong hat?
Okay. Typically because you won't get the performance improvement that you're looking for. So that's one way. The other way is that other than the instructional end of the spectrum, which you only really use with brand new starters or somebody who's brand new in the area that you're helping them to develop, all of the other areas involve questions to one degree. So just like in a good sales conversation, you're constantly asking questions to understand the person or the people in front of you. You're constantly starting to diagnose, okay, where are they? How do I help them best? Because a good training conversation is essentially a sales conversation. We're selling an idea, we're getting them to buy into this concept of how we're going to move them forward. So it's a similar skill set, but deployed a bit differently.
So how do I turn my one-on-ones from just pipeline updates into real coaching conversations?
Okay. It's avoiding the trap a lot of salespeople move into, which is I have a 7-step sales model, and step 1 is plan and prepare, always important, regardless of whether it's a coaching conversation or a sales conversation. Step 2 is that engagement step, but step 3 is the understanding step, and it's the one a lot of salespeople miss and a lot of sales managers miss, is because they jump straight to the solution when really what they should be doing is spending time asking questions. And that's how you move people forward in their development. Get curious, find out, don't solution provide, collaborate, make them part of the process.
So when should a sales leader coach? When should they teach, mentor, or instruct?
It depends where somebody is on that performance pathway. And to be clear, it's about their performance in terms of the element that it is you're trying to develop. So earlier I talked to you about, the why, what, how model, the what being the things that you can develop. My model is mindsets, knowledge, and skills. So you identify what is it that we're trying to help them to develop, and where is their performance or ability in relation to that particular thing. Because just because they're a high performance individual in one area doesn't necessarily they're going to be a high performance individual in another. So it is that diagnosing, okay, where is that person? What's their level of knowledge, their understanding, their ability in this areas? And if I'm out there with that individual, if I'm in a sales environment, if I'm doing a ride along, or if I'm listening in on calls, am I seeing that coming through in their behavior? And if you're not, there's a development need. And then it's a case of, okay, how big is that gap? And that helps you to understand where on that pathway do I need to step in.
So sales is a lagging indicator.
Yes.
How do I measure whether coaching is actually improving sales performance in the moment, or at least near to the moment?
Okay. So back to that model I spoke about earlier, you've got mindsets, knowledge, skills. behaviors, and this is a performance pyramid, and the top end of the behaviors are input KPIs. So I like to see input KPIs as behaviors that are within the individual's control that are directly measurable. These are the things that you're looking to see change. But the difference between a skill and a behavior is a skill is something that an individual can do. The behavior is something that they do. And typically it's the thing that they do without even thinking about it. That's those really embedded behaviors. Because we've all had salespeople who help, and in that training environment, when they're focused and they're concentrating, they can demonstrate the skill that we're looking for. But when they become particularly stressed or particularly relaxed, they revert to type, and that might slip. So it's about monitoring things in those training environments, but also you've got to see what their behavior is like out in context of real sales conversations. There's an element of being part of those as a manager as much as you can. Obviously, it's difficult depending on the number of salespeople that you've got and the environment you're in, but you need to go and see your salespeople, in those conversations to fully diagnose.
We're all responsible for a number at the end of the day. So, what's the right balance between hitting a number and developing people?
I think it often comes down to time scale. Not only have you got to think about, okay, if that person is struggling, so if they're low down that performance pathway, we might want to do two things here. We might want to help them to develop, but also we might want to help to land that number. And so sometimes what you might want to do as a manager is step in and develop by demonstration. I'm going to lead this one. What I'd like you to do is watch what I do here, or to pick up from here, support me. And afterwards, we'll look at why I did what I did in a particular way, and we'll use that to help you model that behavior. That can be great if you're either short of time, or if you've got somebody early down the development spectrum. But the mistake a lot of new managers make is they go for the quick fix, or what they think is the quick fix. I'll just do it. I'll step in and do it. But as a manager, you can't do that with all your people, and that doesn't move them along in terms of their individual development. So it's a balance. Sometimes you do need to step in, particularly if time pressure is tight, or you've got a particular deal which is incredibly important. But it's a big mistake to just keep stepping in and doing it for them. Yeah.
So, what does a genuine coaching conversation sound like?
It's the analogy I used earlier. It's very similar to a good sales conversation. We've got an outcome that we're looking to help that person to get to. Good sales conversations aim towards a win-win outcome, something that's good for the salesperson, their organization, and the customer. And it's exactly the same with a good coaching conversation. So a good coaching conversation has that win-win outcome in mind, but I see selling as exploring as well as targeting a win-win outcome. And so good sales conversation should also use that element. It should be, to a degree, collaborative. And when I'm coaching and developing and mentoring, training salespeople, particularly when I've got a longer term relationship with them, I will talk them through that 4 hats model, because I will tell them when I want to switch hats. So good coaching conversations, I always try and signpost where we are in that process and get some agreement with the salesperson that they think that's the right level of support for them, and allow them to challenge. If they think, no, we're in a mentoring space, and they think, I'm not quite ready for that yet, and you might want to push them in that direction, but they might want to step up and go, like, I want to take some ownership of this and that, and that's great. So I like to think of good coaching skills, good training skills, good mentoring skills as being very similar in some ways to good selling skills, if you think about it in the right way.
It sounds to me like the 4 hats model scales one level up as well. That is, sales leaders can use that to develop their frontline sales managers.
Yeah.
Or do you do something different?
No, it's a performance development pathway. It's not just for salespeople. You can apply it to any situation. Think of the world of sport, for example. If you're helping someone to learn a new sport, you start at the very instructional end of the spectrum. And then you get them involved, you want them to practice, and you give them feedback. That's the teaching. And then you take the reins off a little bit further, but you step in and provide guidance and correction where you see something that's wrong. And even elite athletes have a coach that they work with, and that coach will not be as good at the sport as they are, but it's exactly the same pathway. You can use it for developing, helping anybody to develop. It's not just a salesperson thing.
So what's the first small change I can make tomorrow to start coaching better?
Be curious. Think of it like that sales conversation I spoke about earlier, which is explore and target something that's a win-win outcome. If you need to help the individual understand why it's good for them as an individual and not just the organization, then let's get that positioning right in the first place. But don't jump straight to solution providing. Make sure that exploration step is embedded into that conversation, just as it should be with a customer conversation. The same is true with a learning, development, coaching, mentoring conversation. They all involve an exploration step. So yeah, take time to understand that person and take them with you on that journey. Don't try and impose that journey on them.
So how do you create a coaching culture across your sales organization?
For me, this is where models like the one I've described really help. So a good model should be adaptable and should be relatively high level and should allow opportunities for people to personalize it without breaking the principles that make it work. So that's where I believe models like this are really helpful to make sure everybody understands it, even those people that their responsibility is to develop themselves rather than to develop others. But once everyone understands that simple model and buys into it, that's the fundamental that then can push across your entire organization. Everybody understands the principles at play. And what's great about that is the thing that most sales managers struggle with is most organizations promote great salespeople to be sales managers. But people management, it's a similar but a different skill. But if you've explained the principles at the outset, you've given people a foundation to build on because they can recognize, when I was being helped to develop in this way, I've got a basic understanding from what was going on in the background. So for me, changing cultures is about identifying the model that fits, explaining it in a way that resonates with your organization, and making sure that everybody across the organization understands it.
You have a book coming out, as I mentioned. Care to share a little bit with us?
Yeah, I do. So it's called How to Sell: Everything You Need to Think, Know, and Do to Have Greater Sales Conversations. So it's the mindsets, knowledge, and skills piece I spoke about earlier. It's got the why as well. All good books start with why, as Simon Sinek told us. So yeah, it comes out a week on Tuesday. It's packed full of the things I wish I'd knew 25 years ago, and models like the one we've just described, models that are simple and easy to understand, but are practical and will make a difference to your sales performance. So yeah, out next Tuesday.
Fantastic. Steve, if you were to emphasize the one thing you would want our audience to take away from today's episode, what would that one thing be?
Good question. Just like I do with brand new salespeople or any salesperson, before you enter a sales conversation, take a beat, step back. What is my objective here? And how do I hope I'm going to reach it? And it's exactly the same with a coaching conversation. Take a beat. What hat am I going to wear here? Do I know which hat to wear, or do I need to start off with some diagnosis? And then let's approach the conversation accordingly. It's not a one size fits all. Different people will need you to wear different hats on different days, depending on what you're helping them with. So yeah, take a step back, diagnose, decide which hat you're going to wear first.
Excellent. Steve, this has been great. Where can people learn more? How can they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is the best place. Yeah, I love to connect with people and have conversations on LinkedIn. and off LinkedIn. We can take conversations elsewhere. So LinkedIn is definitely the best place to get in touch with me. If they want to learn more about how I approach things, like I say, grab the book. It's out next Tuesday. How to Sell by Steve Radford. Print, ebook, audiobook. It's all there.
Fantastic. Steve, this has been great. On behalf of everyone here at Sales TV Live, to you and to our audience, thank you for being an active part in today's conversation. If you like what you heard today, please take a moment to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Substack, or YouTube. Let us know what you've learned and what you'd like to learn more about. Your feedback helps us reach more people like you and fulfill our mission of elevating the profession of sales. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.